Alrighty, so welcome guys. I am excited to have another guest. I told y'all this is going to be the season of me having guests, so I'm not always sitting somewhere talking to myself, having these conversations. I'm going to let Dana introduce herself. I kind of like to let my guests introduce themselves because I don't know. I feel like you guys can give all the interesting conversations, but Dana, those of you who follow me know that I'm a Reiki practitioner, and Dana is my teacher. Oh gosh, this is what 5-6 years now that I've been hanging around you. So I'm gonna let her introduce herself, and then we're gonna jump right into the conversation.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Tamara. I'm so glad to be here today. I'm Dana. I'm the owner of Dragonfly Reiki in Atlanta, Georgia. And I've been practicing Reiki for almost 2 decades now. I practice a style of traditional Japanese Reiki called Komyo Reikido. So I practice and teach this. And I'm also a spiritual life coach. And, Tamara also likes to make sure that she lets people know that I am a psychic intuitive too, although that's something that I keep a little bit further down the radar. But since we're on this little chat here, I might as well just lift that up for consideration.
I'm so glad you did.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that I think is relevant to this discussion is that I do work primarily with women, working with healing, working with spiritual development, helping women develop their gifts, find their purpose, but also their spiritual connection, because I really do believe that these gifts are coming from a place from our creator, and how best to figure out how to discover them and work with them than to really start working on deepening that connection with the creator, with the divine, with all of those things that we've been given from birth and we always have access to.
I'm so glad that you're ready to openly admit that.
Well, I think we both have had to go through a little bit of reckoning where our gifts are concerned now, haven't we?
I love it. No, and it's funny, guys, because the first class I sat in with Dana, I was just like, I'm just here for myself. I want to, learn some things just to help manage my own energy and help me with doing a lot of the things with the kids and just even helping them with their energy. And she's like, oh, that's nice. You're going to be teaching, right? And I was like, no, not at all. And 6 years later, here we are.
In fact, this weekend.
So, in fact, this weekend, that's what I was going to say. I'm like, I'll see you this weekend.
Yes, you will. Yes, you will for your first phase of teacher training. That's correct. So yes, when you start on this journey, you don't know where it's going to end up, right?
You really don't.
Because your intentions for that were very different than, not that they're still not there.
Ended up happening.
Right. It's not that they're still not there. It's just that you've expanded on those capabilities and you've expanded on that vision.
Yeah, and I became more open because I was just like, yeah, there's no way I'm coming in here to be a student. Like everywhere I go, I end up kind of teaching, managing, like that kind of thing. And I was intent when I walked into class for Reiki that like, no, I'm just going to be a student. And Dana was like, oh, okay. And she just let me come to that realization on my own. So I'm super appreciative for that because, that's one of the things that teachers do. They have to be able to see you, especially when either you don't see yourself or you're looking at something else, because that's it a lot of times too.
Mm-hmm.
So this month for Healing Through Sacred Writing, the focus, the theme, we're talking about the holidays and just how to get through the holidays, how to manage, how to navigate. I like the word navigate too, like how to navigate the holidays, especially because we have financial stressors, family stress. There's so many different things that just kind of happen. So I always talk about it in the sense of, like, I call it the holiday corridor. So from about like October, so, and I used to just think it was like, oh, it starts at Halloween. It starts the beginning of October. Because I remember going to, I forgot what, it was like a decor store or something, like a arts and crafts store. And I remember them having Christmas stuff out like the end of September.
That's correct.
Like they had the whole thing out. So I was like, that's crazy. So like October 31st. So like all of October straight through February, we have back-to-back holidays. So from Halloween to pretty much Valentine's Day, we're celebrating something. You've got Halloween, you've got Christmas. I mean, and there's so many other holidays in between there too, because we have Jewish holidays that show up in there, and
Thanksgiving.
all kinds of like, Thanksgiving. You have all these celebrations, New Year's, vacation, kids are out of school, like that kind of thing. And I mean, we're going to throw in there now, we just had a whole election, which is highly jarring still for a lot of people. I mean, this is a week out now, and we're still kind of reeling from that. So,
and we'll still be reeling for months to come, because we also have the inauguration coming up. So
right. So all from the holiday corridor,
change.
right?
That's correct.
Because like January, we have, the election, and so we have all these things just kind of back to back. On top of that, we have daylight savings time, where we have less daylight, and so seasonal affective disorder kind of kicks in. So I wanted to start having these conversations where we're discussing just some tips, but just some realistic conversation on how to just kind of manage all of that. How do you manage when, you have to go sit at your family's house for the holiday and you really don't fool with them all year long?
Right.
And then all of a sudden, everybody's expecting you to come and be there for the holiday. And it's like, I just really want to maybe get a plate and leave. How do you manage the stress of us being in such a voyeuristic society where it's like there's this pressure to, I posted this the other day. I said, y'all are out here stressed out, but you're competing with scammers. Like all these things that people say that they have and that they're buying. I mean, people are out here scamming and they really don't have those things, but you see the Christmas gifts stacked to the ceiling, and there's that thing where people are like, well, I can't get this or I can't get that. And those things, people kind of start to internalize them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well,
so,
there's that image that people cultivate on social media, and then there's what their reality is.
Exactly.
And if we're only seeing the image and not the reality, there's definitely that feeling of feeling less than, feeling that you have to keep up, feeling that FOMO, right? Fear of missing out.
Yeah.
Instead of just saying, well, maybe they're only presenting a particular side of themselves or the things that they want people to see, or because they're feeling insecure, and this is why we're seeing this very curated image. But a lot of it really, I think, comes down to having that discernment, and maybe, just maybe, spending less time on social media when you start feeling yourself feeling maybe triggered or getting upset or feeling less than, or feeling like you have to compete and keep up with other people, because it's not real.
That part. I think it just feels so real for folks because, there are real people on there that you may know. There are real people that you talk to. There's conversation being had every day. I saw a conversation once where I think I was talking about like how you get together with your friends and having friends and how you make friends. And I saw so many women, because you and I both, we kind of focus our demographic on women. but whoever is here is who's here.
Mm-hmm.
But there were conversations for women where they were like, well, I don't really have any friends that I talk to in person. They don't really have people that they hang out with in person. There are these people that they've met online, and like kind of that's where they're at. And so their reality doesn't have, you know, community in there. So I think it can get really hard for people because they're somewhere in their commute. I mean, it's just what you said. They're competing with something that's really not real.
Yeah. Well, and there is value in online community. I mean, I've had some friends in online community,
Mm-hmm.
including a group of women that I've stayed connected with since before our children were born. So,
Mm.
my daughter is 17. So that's
Yeah.
at least 18 years of being in this online community with these women that I've met a few of them, but most of them I've not met. They are, scattered throughout the country. So I've only met a handful over the nearly 2 decades that we've known each other.
Mm.
And of course, as you know, um, I have online communities that I cultivate. Like the private Facebook group that I cultivate for wise women, and there are other things that I've done. But you're absolutely right that having a connection to actual flesh and blood people in person when you can have that opportunity, I think helps because you get to see that we're all really having the same struggles. Things are kind of messy, and we're all just finding ways to get through the day together. Whereas, again, even in the best online communities, I think the majority of us are still always trying to put our best face forward.
Mm. Yeah. Because I know me, like I could be having a horrible day, so I'm just gonna come online and say something funny.
Mm-hmm.
Because like,
And that's totally how I roll and cope too, right? Find the
yeah,
funniest memes and share them because I need to blow off some steam,
it's
right?
a
We all do
complete
that.
coping skill. It's a
Absolutely.
completely valid coping skill. And I'm goofy. And I like, really, really silly things. So a lot of the stuff that I'm posting because I'm cackling at it. Like,
Right.
I'm
Exactly.
happy that you guys find it funny, but like I found this hilarious. And that's me laughing at myself and sharing it. And then I kind of come back and I'm like, oh wait, they think that's funny too. They're as
Hmm.
crazy as me. I love this.
Well, and to be honest, a certain level of like silly, goofy, and gallows humor is going to get a lot of us through these very difficult and uncertain times that we're facing right now as well.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
hard. It's hard to be angry. It's hard to be serious. It's hard to be uh, constantly in that place of fight or flight, right? And
Yeah.
that's exactly where that opposition that we're constantly dealing with. That's where the patriarchy. That's where this, white male dominated culture really wants us to be. They want us to be in fight or flight. They want us to be off balance. They want us to be scared. They want us to be consumers. They want
Mm-hmm.
us to be constantly overstretched past our limits because that's when we are most vulnerable. It's easier to take advantage of us. It's easier to overwhelm us and get us to be compliant. But if we are, I think of like in the words of like someone like Patricia Hersey, right? If we're rested and we're resourced, we
Mm,
take better care of ourselves.
we can. And that goes back to that discernment too. Like if we're rested and we kind of have a space of recharge, we can decide like, I won't engage in this, or, okay, I can kind of have this conversation, but to this degree.
Right. Right.
We can have better discernment and feel confident
Yeah.
about making that decision too. Because I think a lot of the ambivalence comes from not feeling confident because you're always kind of connected in this space or stressed out over here. And when you're constant, like when your nervous system is always a wreck, it's hard
Mm-hmm.
to
And
make
you, yeah, and you
a
can't keep
decision
spirit
with
either.
trust.
You can't
Yeah.
hear spirit. You can't get that discernment. And you also can't get that discernment about what your nervous system needs either. So you and I both know from the healing work that we do that bringing your nervous system back into balance, right? Allowing your parasympathetic nervous system to recover, allows all of your systems to come back online. It allows them to all communicate more effectively with each other. And it allows all of like your hormone levels and everything else to normalize your blood pressure, your respiratory systems, your all of the functioning of like the nerves in your cells, right? Like all of that activity,
Yeah.
all of that has to normalize. And you can't do that unless if you retreat, you rest, you unplug, you choose not to engage,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
we don't, like I was noticing yesterday with some conversations I was having with people online that, and everybody's, well, not everybody, but a number of people are are upset, they're anxious, they're angry, they're afraid, and so they're highly reactive right now to anything and everything. And sometimes we just need to pull back.
Yeah.
We don't need to attend every fight to which we're invited. And this goes for anything online. It also goes for your family,
Mm,
and how you choose to spend the holidays, and how you choose to spend your time with people are, who are aggravating your nervous system to say. I was gonna
that's the technical way to say it.
Right, right. I was trying to think of another way to say it. I was like, no, they're really just aggravating your nervous system, right? So, talking about like, okay, well, we know that the next big holiday that's coming up, of course, is Thanksgiving. And that tends to, put people in one of two camps. Either, oh my gosh, I really don't want to deal with this holiday at all, and having to deal with my relatives and their dramas and their politics and all of their demands on my time. And then the other one are the people that like, they just love to go and spend time with people and just eat until they pass out, right? And for those folks who have that opportunity, that they have a stable enough family situation, that they have enough privilege and all of the other things that enable them to have that experience, that is amazing. But the majority of us actually don't. The majority of us have some sort of issue, whether it's politics with family members that we don't agree with, or existing family dynamics, dysfunction, that make those get-togethers really stressful,
Yeah.
or just even if they're not stressful in a bad way, but just overloading, right? Like a
Yeah.
lot of that energy, a lot of that expectation, even the I would say the expectation that we inherit, right, from our elders about what holidays are supposed to look like, and how people are supposed to
Hmm.
behave, and how much you're supposed to show up, and how much you're supposed to do, and having that coupled with what it is that you really can handle.
Yeah, we were kind of talking about that with the last guest about because I had a conversation with the client about the holidays, and I was saying how it's changed so much, like in my family, because I used to just kind of pride myself with Thanksgiving, I'm gonna start cooking and prepping on Tuesday, you know, Wednesday, I mean, because we used to have Wednesday off. And so
Right.
Wednesday, you spend like the whole day cooking, and then you're up on Thursday at 3 a.m. with the oven preheated, and you got the turkey cooking all day. Like, those were the expectations. And it was kind of like, if those things didn't happen, it wasn't Thanksgiving.
Right.
If you didn't, I remember this was a long time ago, my mom stopped cooking turkey, and that's when it started to change for me too, because I don't know, me and my sister called it the mutant turkey. I don't know where she got this turkey from. It was huge. It was just way too big. We had even had people over. People took turkey home. There was still turkey in the freezer by like the summer, because we had like chopped it up. We had like put it in the freezer. We gave turkey away.
Mhm.
And I remember we were just like, we're not eating turkey for Thanksgiving. Like
Well, I
we
was going to
just
say, by
didn't.
then you were over it. You were like
Yeah,
way
we
over
were
it. I mean, if
over
you're
it.
eating this
So
6 months later, it's too much.
I was just like, because I remember we'd be like, well, let's get something. You can go unfreeze that turkey. We're not
No,
unfreezing the turkey anymore. We're not touching the turkey. As a matter of fact, we threw it out. We threw it out. She yelled about it, but we were like, we're not touching turkey anymore. And we told her, like, do not get a turkey, because if you get it, you're gonna be the one eating it. And I think that was the first year she barbecued. She threw some ribs on the grill
nice.
and she barbecued. And it was kind of like oh, well, if you're barbecuing, then you kind of don't have the mashed potatoes and
Right.
gravy kind of thing. And it started to change like what we would eat for Thanksgiving. And so by the time, fast forward, I'm married with kids and stuff like that. We all brought like all these different dishes, and so it was like, oh, I'd have like this big spread, and I had made 3-4 cakes and all of this stuff. And then I realized, like, I'm kind of exhausted, like, because
Hmm.
that's a whole performance.
Yes, it
Although
is.
I love to cook, it's a way that I share love. I was just like this don't have to be like, we don't have to do all that. Now we figure out what restaurants are open and we go ahead and show up. I mean, last year we went to Magnolia Cafe over here in Tucker, and we waited outside in that line, and we went on in to eat, but there was nothing to clean when you got
That's
home.
right.
You could sit down, you could watch football. I think we'll cook like a little dish of something, or like my aunt will, like, she'll still buy like a little pie or something,
Hmm.
but we don't do all of that. And it was kind of freeing
Yes.
to just say, like, you can eat whatever you want on Thanksgiving. I mean, sometimes we get in hot wings, and I mean,
Oh my
somebody's
God.
still gonna
Hot
make a
wings
little
for
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving are perfect.
It's so good. It's like we're just gonna get some hot wings. We're gonna call up JR Crickets and get some wings, and you can still make a little side thing of sweet
Hmm.
potatoes or candy
Sure.
yams or something like that. But it was just this whole like deconstructing
Yes.
what the holiday has to be. And some of that had to change too, because I had jobs where I had to work.
Right.
I wasn't, I didn't have like the 9 to 5, or like I'm off for the summer or anything like that. So stuff like that started changing too. Family dynamics change, people pass away,
That's right.
and so I started realizing that, I also started, because you're talking about the patriarchy too, but then I started looking at, like, who is the matriarch of the family, right? And what does that actually look like?
Hmm.
It's not just big mama because of her age, it's an energy that is the glue that holds the
Right.
family together. And I realized, like, after I stopped, everybody was like, well, where are we gonna go eat? I was like, well, where are y'all houses at? Like, what? Maybe I need to
Right.
come
Why
to
is it
your.
your right? Right. Well, like, and that's what, and I think, and I think you get to a good point there, right? Like a lot of these traditions that we have that people think we need to we need to uphold are ones that came from a completely different generation. A lot of times women didn't work, or that was just the expectation, right? The women do this
Mm-hmm.
performative thing for days on end where they're getting all this stuff ready for the holidays, whether that is Thanksgiving or Christmas or any of the other holidays that families and people celebrate. But it's up to the women to make this thing happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
The interesting thing is that growing up in my family, my grandfather was the one that did the Thanksgiving dinner because it was his favorite holiday and he loved to cook.
Mm.
So interestingly, I actually had for a while up until, I was like maybe 15 or so, I had this completely different model of that holiday
Mm.
because my grandfather was the one who
Okay.
who took over that tradition. But my mom did a lot of, my mom also did a lot of cooking and baking and that kind of thing. But, they set up this expectation that we had to only eat certain types of foods. We only had to, have certain types of holidays, do them a certain way. Well, why? Why do we have to keep doing it that way? My family doesn't, my family, my husband and children and I, we're kind of agnostic about turkey. We don't even like turkey that much, like, or ham. I don't like ham. So, like, why do we have to make these things if none of us really like absolutely love them and feel like this is the way that we want to spend our holiday? What if we wanted to, like you said, make ribs or barbecue steak, or one year, a few years ago, in fact, my older stepchild had graduated university in Prague, so we were gone right before Thanksgiving overseas, and we had gone to Prague, and then after that we'd gone to Spain. So we spent all week eating Spanish food and tapas and stuff. We came back, and that is how we spent Thanksgiving. We made a whole meal of tapas, and we were perfectly happy.
Perfectly fine.
Yeah,
like,
I couldn't stomach the thought of eating turkey after having like tapas.
Nobody wants the turkey. Nobody wants the green beans. You can put your gravy boat away. Like, it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if those things are really joyful and life-giving to you, and you enjoy the whole process and the whole ritual of making and creating these dishes or baking pies, do them. But like, I don't feel like we should be forced to continue to uphold these traditions if they're just work and they're not bringing any joy to the person who is doing them, or the people who are even receiving them aren't really receiving them with the spirit of gratitude, right? That it's an expectation and it's not gratitude.
It stops being my pleasure when it becomes an obligation.
Right.
When I feel obligated to have to do all of these things, and those family recipes are super important, and there's a portion of that, especially in Black families and families of color, where we are passing the torch.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
There's a rite of passage thing that kind of comes along with, like, are you mature enough to make the turkey?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, that's a thing, right? Like, can you cook enough to cook for everybody? Like, there's a whole entire thing where that is concerned, where it's like, do you have what it takes to, host the family holiday? Well, that can look different for everybody. Like, hosting is it's a lot, but it's kind of considered to be like a rite of passage. It's like, I should still be able to decorate and order some food and still host everybody over.
Right.
So just, I think in this space, we have to look at like those things that kind of feel like obligations to us versus saying like, no, I'm actually really happy to do that. Like, I love bringing my famous macaroni and cheese and making everybody happy. And, there's always something to come in and somebody thought the food was really good and the food was nasty. And, we all kind of chuckle about it. Right? Yeah. Those stories kind of, they go down in history, and you talk about them 15 years later. And so those things, have to happen. But how do we create memory? Because I think at the heart of it, it's about creating memories.
Yes.
And bringing everybody together. And I think that gets hard for a certain group of folks when those memories aren't created all year long. When I don't hear from you all year long. We don't have any, like, there's no connection any other time. And then I'm expected to show up on the holiday with a bunch of folks that like completely forgot about me.
Right. But there's this expectation that, and this obligation to do certain things and perform and show up, but there hasn't really been the effort the rest of the year to cultivate any kind of sense of community or shared connections, is what you're saying, right?
Exactly. And I'm moving around just for a second. I realized I needed to charge my laptop up while we're on here. So little technical stuff.
Yeah. But while you're doing that, I was going to bring something up actually, because I was thinking about, so that one of the things that I follow is the Wheel of the Year. and looking at the seasons and looking at kind of the way that uh, really the way that our ancestors looked at the cycle of the year. And so we have, these different seasons where it's resting and planting and harvesting and celebrating, and times where we are more out there and more involved, and then other times where we are retreating. And so this time of year,
Yes.
as we move, right, we move from fall into winter and reaching the winter solstice, approaching the winter solstice, is the time that we are actually supposed to be slowing down. We are supposed to be harvesting and kind of looking at all of the things that we need to gather up, right? Because, traditionally, our ancestors, at least in the Northern Hemisphere, were preparing for a long winter. They were preparing to, do without or make do with less, which is completely opposite of our consumer culture, where this time of year we're all about spending and doing as much as possible, right? And completely, overextending ourselves. The more traditional way was that we started gathering our resources because we knew we were going to be slowing down. We knew we were going to be doing less. We knew we were going to be resting and retreating, and allowing that time for us to slow down and recharge, right? Because the cycle of nature is that, like, right now, everything stops growing and all of the effort goes into the roots and the seeds to help prepare for the spring season. But instead, we're burning the candle at both ends. We're not actually giving ourselves that time to go inward and to rest and to slow down and to reflect on where we are and what our needs are, really.
In that way, there we go. I don't know what's going on technically. We're having some. There we go. We should be good to go. Right. But I never thought about it in that way, that this is hibernation, a hibernation space, especially this is where seasonal affective disorder kind of kicks in for some folks, and we do tend to slow down the we have less daylight, but on the other hand, we're ramping up consumerism. So yeah, I've never put those two together in that way.
Right. So how do we find those ways to slow down and rest and recharge and say no to things, at a time when we're expected to constantly be going and constantly saying yes and doing more over and over again? So does that mean maybe, saying no to some of the, the parties and gatherings, especially maybe the ones that you're not that excited about going to, or maybe saying I'm only going to make a quick appearance for 30 minutes or an hour and then I'm going home? Or maybe, like you said, choosing to do your holiday meals a little bit differently, whether you're outsourcing them by going to a restaurant or even doing the, I went to a Thanksgiving dinner a couple of years ago that my friends invited us to, and a lot of the stuff that they got from was like the Honey Baked Ham store, and then we bought a couple of things just to, fill in. But it was kind of nice in a way because it was just so relaxed. Like, it was like, okay, most of the stuff is made. All we have to do is heat it up, and, we can just sit around and, have a glass of wine and enjoy each other's company. And the cleanup.
And I didn't think about that either. Just like the holiday parties at the office and, feeling obligated to go to those too. Like I wasn't even thinking about that in that regard, but that's something that makes people kind of stressed out too. It's like I have to go to because it's a work obligation, and there's kind of like, well, like what happens if you don't show up to that? People are there's always like this space where you have to show up for stuff based on perception.
Correct.
How are people going to perceive you? What are people going to think? You're always the black sheep. You never. And some of it is not even just stress. It kind of goes back to what you were saying about like even just being overloaded with certain things. I'm the person that says, and I do this kind of when I go anywhere. It's not even just the holiday stuff. I'll say like, I'm going to give myself 30 minutes. and I give myself like a check-in. I'll say, okay, I'm going to go to this, and in 30 to 40 minutes, I'm going to check in with myself. And if I'm cool and I'm having fun, and maybe I don't even realize that the 30 minutes has gone by, then I'll stay for a little
Yeah.
bit longer. But if at that time I realize like, this is too much, or they've already started, it's, then I give myself a way to kind of excuse myself or make that Irish exit, as they call it. It's like, oh, okay, I'm not, so just even being able to check in with yourself and your own and your nervous system, like just knowing like, okay, I'm here and I'm overloaded. Or does that mean that you have to necessarily leave completely, or is it a space where it's like, okay, I'm going to go regroup because I'm normally just a little bit overloaded? Like these are the kind of things that you can start to do for yourself, just so you can, like, because those things are self-care.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And I think too, looking at the entire holiday season and saying like, what sort of things can I take off this list or minimize on this list, even before things start to get really into full swing. Like we're starting to get to that point. And I know I'm already looking at, my calendar and the things that I know that I have. And there are certain things that are a priority. My daughter is a senior and she's on the wrestling team, and wrestling season is just getting into full swing. So I know that's one of my priorities, right? But maybe something else isn't a priority. Maybe, that I do markets because I also make candles and room sprays. So I'm looking at this and I'm like, all right, which markets do I want to do and which ones don't I want to do? And like, how can I plan this out so I'm not overextending myself? Because these things are all really tiring. They can take a lot out of you. And I still have to have some time for myself. I still have to take care of myself and my health and my well-being, and make sure that I, try to get, 7 to 8 hours of sleep at night, or, whatever it is that's really important to me. I mean, I really do, because I can't do my work otherwise, and I can't take care of myself otherwise.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
sometimes it's just making those little changes, and it's okay to say no.
It is. And I think that becomes hard for, the FOMO you mentioned earlier.
Yes.
And then, when you have those spaces of people pleasing, because the way that I always look at it is that like everybody plays a role in your family. Like your family's like a TV sitcom or like a movie, and
Right.
everybody plays a character. And just like, like, oh, I can kind of cozy up to this person and, get what I need. All I got to do is go sit with grandpa and just kind of, talk with them a little bit, and he's going to slide me $5. You know what grandparents do, oh, I've got that favorite auntie that's going to jet set into town and she's going to bring all the gifts. You know what I mean? Like, you know who plays what part.
Yeah.
And people know likewise what part you play. And so they're going to know, like, if you have those kind of people pleasing tendencies, or if there's a space where you really have trouble saying no, they're not going to hesitate to kind of ask you to do these things. So you may end up on Thanksgiving being the taxi to all of the elders and bringing them back and forth. Oh, well, Miss such and such just wanted a plate and I made her a plate. Can you bring her a plate of food? And now you're taxiing plates all over the city and, taking stuff in. And so you have to, really and these are things that we're talking about that pertain to this season, but they're things that you have to kind of be working on
the rest of the
consistently
year.
So when it comes time to use it during this time, it doesn't feel inauthentic.
Right. Well, and I think, to your point too, people like us also end up in that situation where we're listening to everyone's problems and we're trying to problem solve, and there's this tendency to get triangulated in the middle of other people's drama. And that is also another space of self-care where you can decide at some point to say, you know what, this is not the time or the place for us to be having this discussion. Or I know that you're having a problem with Uncle so and so. So, you're going to have to address that directly with him and not talk to me about that because I can't fix this issue. But a lot of times, like you said, when we get into those people pleasing tendencies, we want to make everybody happy. We want to make everybody heard. We want to make everybody feel good. And that may not be realistic at all. Did we lose you? Are you still here tomorrow? I may be forced to keep talking until she comes back. Oh, there she is. You're moving again. Can you hear me?
Okay, there we go. I don't know why it keeps timing out. This is interesting.
Yeah, you kind of just.
Yeah, I can hear you.
You just froze.
Uh-oh.
I know. So I was like, oh no, I'm going to have to start making conversation.
That's so. You know what? This always happens when the conversation is good and there's a word to get out. So I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe we're energetically overloading the circuits. I don't know.
Overloading something.
I've seen that happen. But no, you've seen that happen in in Reiki stuff too. So it wouldn't surprise me.
So it's like it's not surprising me. But yeah, it's the kind of thing where I think when we start having this conversation, well, we have to start to remind ourselves that these are things that we should be working on all year long. It's just that the holiday kind of highlights it.
Yeah. The holidays are crunch time for all of that, right? That's your proving ground right there as to whether or not you've started doing that work the rest of the year, because that's where all of the practice that you've had with every other situation, every other person the rest of the year comes into play with the people who are going to push your buttons the most.
All day long. All day. It's complete application time. And that's one of the things I work with my clients on. It's like we'll work maybe 6 weeks on and then like take a week off or something like that, because I always tell them, I'm like, you really aren't able to go out and properly apply the information that we learned if you're kind of like right up under me, like constantly being guided by me. I want you to kind of go out and live a little, see things with this different, through this different lens, and figure out where to kind of apply all the stuff that we've been talking about and all the stuff that you've learned. So yeah, the holiday time is perfect time. And I get, last year wasn't so bad, but the past few years, I'm usually kind of double booked through the holidays because people are kind of slowing down in that hibernation period, and they're figuring out, it's like, oh, like that apprehension starts to boil. Like, well, what am I going to do when I have to go over here? And then, when I kind of have the conversation and say, do you have to go? It's like, well, yeah, like that. So here come all of these family obligations and expectations. And it's like, well, you're 40, 50 years old and you don't feel like you can say no to an adult parent. And so all of these things start coming out. I don't deal with this person all year long, and then all of a sudden we're at the family gathering and I have to deal with them. Or the uncle that is an absolute menace and terror, he's terrorized everybody forever. We know he's going to be there. And, maybe your grandma or your great auntie never told her child or her brother to leave people alone, or, so there's all of these things that happen in this like petri dish that is the family,
Petri
but
dish is
people
really
are
a
still
good way to describe it.
there's a lot of stuff growing in that petri dish, and folks, you know, I always tell my clients, it's like the same way that they have expectations of you, you should have expectations of
Oh
them.
yeah, yeah. Why
And
is it a one-way thing?
why is it a one-way thing, and why is it like, you know, how are you not able to just say, you know, I don't want to talk about like why I don't have kids yet, because like I kind of told you about that last year and it's still the same. But you know, some people can't get kind of snippy like that, and so it's
Mm-hmm.
like, how do you go in there with maybe I'm a fan of like prepared scripts,
Yeah, it's a good
like
idea.
little
Mm-hmm.
little stuff that you can already kind of have to say, because you already know this person is gonna have a little snide remark. So it's like, do I lean into that, or do I have to? Because sometimes there's things that you can let go right over your head, and it's like, I'm not going to respond to that.
Right.
And then sometimes you do have to respond so that person knows, like, this is me setting a boundary.
Right, right. And again, going back to that whole, you don't have to engage in every fight that you are invited to, you know, and setting a
Mm-hmm.
boundary is a good way to do that, to say, like, this is not the time or the place, right? We're not going to be doing this right now, you know. Um, and you're right. I think having some scripts and practicing those scripts beforehand is really important if you're going to choose to do that in the first place. If you're going
Yeah.
to choose to go and spend the, you know, the holidays with your loved ones, but also prepare yourself too. I think if you choose to say no, like, I'm not going to come to that, you know, that dinner or that celebration, or I'm only coming for dessert, you know, whatever it is that, you know,
Right.
whatever it is where you choose to kind of draw that line in the sand as to like what you're going to do and what you're not going to do. But be prepared, you know, to be able to, you know, defend yourself without hopefully causing a big fight. But sometimes, you know, sometimes those things happen. You know, what I often see, so you're in the position where a lot of times you're preparing people who are apprehensive. You know, on my side, and I've often told my clients this, I'm like, don't wait until you're already in crisis mode to come in and receive Reiki, because Reiki will help prepare you and help get your nervous system in a much better place to be able to go and spend the time and do these things. But often
Mm-hmm.
what we find happens is they go and then they're just wiped out, or they're, you know, they're they're
Just
wiped out,
frazzled.
they're angry, they're completely discombobulated, right? Like, they've gone through all this stuff, and so then they want, you know, me to help put them back together, you know. And so
Yeah.
a lot of the discussions that I have with them is like, if you know that you're going to be going into these situations, let's prepare you. And then if you need to come and kind of get things kind of leveled out again, that's good. But we're not having to do quite as much work then afterward,
Yeah.
right? Because, you know, it's much harder to keep putting things back together than to, you know, help create a system that allows your body to try to hold it together as well as it can during that
Yeah.
time,
Oh
right?
no, that's a
Then
that's
we
a
don't have to
really good
make we
point.
don't have to make so much. Then the adjustments are not as intense, right? If you always
No,
wait
that's a
till,
really good
you know,
point.
so
Yeah.
that's, you know, another thing that I think it's important for people to understand too.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
The
by the time
proactive
you're
versus
by the
reactive.
time you're in pain, whether that's, you know, emotional, psychic, you know, physical pain, right? You've already got the message that something is way out of whack.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, that's a really good point. The proactive versus the reactive, which is what I'm always coaching my clients with, is like, how do we oh, there we go. Okay.
Did we
It's
lose you
like,
again?
how do I must be having internet issues today. Yeah,
Hmm.
no, there we are. I must be having internet issues today, which is weird because I never have internet issues over here. It must be getting ready to rain. Um, but no, just that proactive piece and just preparing, because we're always talking mind, body, and soul alignment. So just not just preparing your mind, not just preparing your heart, but preparing your body, because when that stress comes, it puts you in fight or flight.
Yes.
And it's like, do I defend myself? Do I, fight through this? Or do I get up and do I run? Or, fawn? It's like the deer in the
Oh, yeah.
headlights.
Mhm.
I'm stunned because, family did blah, blah, blah. Because you could know how toxic they could be, and they can always still surprise you. Like, they can
Yes, they
always
can.
still surprise you. So just putting yourself, what can you do even to pace through, even, thinking of how, like, another stress people have is like, how do I pay for the holiday and not
Oh,
feel
yeah.
so overwhelmed? Layaway is still a thing. Just even so, Reiki, yoga, meditation, things that you can do to just kind of manage, because the reality is you're budgeting all year long.
Mhm.
Money's a thing all year long. It's just like it feels extra stressful at this time. I like to get I like to put money in increments on gift cards.
Mhm.
Like, you can, because you can, most gift cards you can refill. um so I like to put money in increments on gift cards, and then it's like, oh, here you go, by the so you're not feeling, because $200 at one time can be a lot, but
Right.
54 times is different, or 25 4 times, 8 times, like, so just think about things that you could do that don't send your nervous system in a tizzy.
Right.
Like, constantly putting yourself at the point where you're at the last minute trying to get stuff. Some people like that last minute Christmas shopping. They like the thrill of being
Yeah.
out there with folks. But I mean, we got Amazon all year. You could just kind of get stuff and
Yeah. Yeah, or
stack
you could
up.
even just reprioritize what that season looks like and how much consumerism are you choosing to participate in?
Mm-hmm.
Are there other ways that you can gift and offer, things to the people that you love? I actually kind of prefer experiences over physical items.
Yeah.
For the most
Yeah.
part, or just or giving setting a gift limit, right? A dollar limit on how much you're going to spend on family members. But like the other thing that I see too is like people have this feeling that they have to give like older relatives or their adult siblings or other people like gifts. Like why? Like why do we have to do that? Like to me, like okay, give your kids gifts and if you're a grandparent, give your grandchildren gifts, but like do you really need to give everybody gifts? I mean,
No, you don't. And I there was a period of time where I would give everybody like maybe one thing. So the adults got something kind of small, the kids kind of got the big stuff. Now I kind of, it's not so many of us. And so it's like, here you're going to get this one thing. For my kids, and God bless them, my dad finally got it. My aunt is finally getting it, but my aunt was like, she didn't have kids or anything, and so we were kind of the kids, and so she
sure,
always bought like the best clothes, because she always kind of kept she's an
right.
educator, but she kept a retail job too, so she like, she was gonna get you all the nice stuff from
Yeah.
Macy's and stuff like that. And so she
Well, and
prided herself.
it's fun to be in that kind of role too.
I think it is. As that's what I was like. She would, get all this stuff, and my kids would just be like, "Oh, these are nice," but they weren't like, "Oh my gosh!" Like, they were never like that on Christmas. And so now she finally has like cooled down, and she's like, "Oh, I'm gonna get them one thing," and I'm like, "They're fine." Like, so she still kind of is like, "Well, I'm only gonna get you guys this." It's good.
Yeah.
Like, we finally got her to the point where it's just like, no one's looking for, a crowded Christmas tree or anything like that. Like, you buy that one thing, and like, you don't even have to wrap it. It's
Right.
fine. But that's still that obligation, for years. That's the person that she's been, and she buys like all the big nice stuff.
Yeah.
She used to buy all the good educational toys and stuff, so you knew you could pick the right stuff out the Penny's catalog, and she was going to get the
Right.
she was going to
Yeah.
like, that was her. So now, I'm even with the kids, like my dad is just like, I'm giving y'all gift cards, here you go. And even then he stopped the gift cards. He's just like, you're going to get this Cash App and you're going to go do whatever you need to do for the kids. Fine by me. You don't have to wrap anything. But my aunt is still like, we'll get there. And she still has like one little wrap thing under the tree. Because it's
well,
like,
that's nice though. I mean,
you go,
again, if that's something that you enjoy doing and it gives you, it feels joyful and life-giving, and then do it, but don't do it because you feel obligated.
Because I'm telling her, I'm like, please don't go out here and stress yourself out. We're gonna order all the stuff, we're gonna order it. Amazon is like, that's totally okay by me. Like, actually, if you don't wrap it, then you don't have anything to clean up. Just put it in a gift bag and
I'm a big fan of gift bags. I mean, I reuse gift bags.
I'm not going to struggle through the wrapping paper and the tape. Is too much. I'm going to put it in a gift bag, So it's starting to think about those things, because and that kind of mindset came from trying to decrease stress. Like,
right.
And the malls not being open as much anymore. You started going to the malls at a period of time and nothing was there.
Right.
So it's like, I don't want to hop around. Oh, we can just order it on Amazon and it's the same quality thing. Boom. I can just order from Kohl's. That's great.
Yeah. Or if you're the kind of person that you enjoy going to, enjoy shopping local and buying things at markets, you can also buy stuff at the other time of year. So if you see something in June at some place you go to and you think, oh, so-and-so would really like that, buy that then and put it away. I mean, again, just limit your stress. I mean, I think we, I think, again, going back to like how we started this discussion, which was talking about social media in particular has given us this idea that we're, again, supposed to curate these holidays a certain way. And, we're supposed to have this perfect looking tree and it's supposed to, be filled with presents or, I mean, I will say one thing about somebody that, because I grew up interfaith, Hanukkah is not really a holiday that's really big on the consumer stuff. I mean, and mostly it's small, it's very small gifts, or it's money, or it's, semi-practical things. I mean, it was never like meant to be, like Christmas, which is this giant consumer holiday. So, maybe that's something to take some of our, inspiration from, is that you can
same thing with Kwanzaa.
Yeah, you can have a meaningful holiday without having to, go into debt. You can still have fun little gifts, or do like I don't know, like a white elephant type thing where everybody has a certain amount of money and maybe you've got some theme around like the stuff that, that people are going to spend money on, or I don't know, but I think that we've gotten this idea again through social media that is like, we have to keep up with what everybody else is doing. And it's not, to me, so many of these things are really, they're not sustainable. They're not sustainable financially. They're not sustainable environmentally. They're not sustainable socially. And I love Christmas, but at the same time, like, I find myself saying, like, is all of this really necessary?
Yeah. And I started thinking that when my oldest was younger, it was like people were just buying all of these toys and gifts, and I was like, he can't even play with all of this.
Yeah, they just right, and they just rip open all the packages. They look at it, they go, oh, okay, and then they go on to the next thing. It's not.
He would like literally sit the stuff to the side. It would collect a little dust, and then he'd come back. I started telling people, I need y'all to slow down, because he would have stuff still wrapped up.
Yeah.
That he had kind of sat to the side, and then 6 months later he pulls it open, and I'm like, where did you even get that from? Oh, he had kind of tucked it away, or well, he's like, I could open it a little later. So he would kind of have his little Christmas in July by himself.
Right.
And then I was like, Oh no, like we don't have to, like it felt a little gluttonous to
Yeah.
me. And so I was just like, guys, we don't, he doesn't need all of those things. He's not even playing with it. And then when I started to go donate all that stuff, I was like, no, we need to kind of revamp this, because then the gift giving became about the giver versus them paying attention to what the receiver actually needed or what they were going to
Mhm.
receive. So I
And
think
what
we
they're
got to
going to
kind of think
appreciate.
about
You
that too.
can't
Yeah.
appreciate it when, when you're given so much all the time. I
Yeah.
think that's the other piece of it too.
Yeah. It's hard to and some people just aren't even thinking about that. Like for me, I'm like, my birthday's the day after. My son's birthday's the 21st. I'm like, I grew up, it was like 2 days of gifts. It was never combined. Hallelujah. And I
Right.
don't do that for my son, but it's an experience. So now when I ask him, I'm like, what do you want for your birthday? He's like, oh, let's just go to the movies. Or, oh, I just want to go do this thing. And I remember, like my dad and my aunt saying, well, he doesn't want to do this. There's not too much. No, like he literally isn't, like he's content. And
Mm-hmm.
so I learned from that to just figure out like what actually makes me content. What actually makes me feel
Mm-hmm.
like I'm good with this. And it's not a sense of settling. It's a sense of like I actually feel fulfilled if I just
Right.
do this one thing, or like you were saying, like experiences and things like that. So I think the holiday corridor is a good time to ask about, like, start considering what makes you feel fulfilled, what actually makes
Mm-hmm.
you feel content, and add more of that.
Yes.
So that helps to decrease the stress too. Like, because I mean, if going to JJ's and getting a fish plate makes you feel content, you should go do that.
Right. 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 Right.
You know?
Or if if you enjoy doing some of the, like my daughter and I love decorating the tree together. That's just kind of our big thing. We make a
Mm-hmm.
big deal out of it, and, and put on Christmas music, and, eat fun foods, and just have a good time. That to
Mm-hmm.
us is like I think in some ways that's sort of the highlight of the entire experience, the whole holiday experience for us, even more than
Oh yeah.
Christmas Day. So yeah, I think you're
Well,
right
and I
about that.
start
Like fulfilled and
decorating as soon
content
as
are good.
Mariah thaws out. Mhm. Yeah, that's what
Yes,
makes
yeah.
me feel happy. That like as soon as Mariah thaws out, I'm gonna start putting out a little something here, and I don't do too much because Sterling is always like, Thanksgiving isn't here yet, but we have little small things out, and I'm like, oh, that just makes me happy, so that's good enough. Like,
Yeah,
so just
yeah,
finding that's that true Christmas cheer kind of thing. Like what makes you feel fulfilled. So
right.
I want you just to give us some last things in closing, maybe even Reiki related, but also just like life coach related, things like that, that you would suggest for clients, that, or just suggesting for us in general, because we talked about a lot of things, but maybe some somatic things to help with us somatic symptoms, and just helping us to stay calm and feel centered during this time.
Right, right. No, that's a really great question. The thing that came to mind first for me is just sometimes, like if we're feeling really dysregulated, we're feeling overwhelmed, just placing like one hand, run on your chest and the other hand on your belly, and just trying to slow down your breathing, right? Just trying to take some deep breaths in and out for a minute or two, or as long as you feel like you can. First of all, like placing your hands on yourself brings yourself back to your body, because
Mm-hmm.
first of all, when you're in a dysregulated state, you are not really in your body. You're
Yeah.
you're like way up here. So in order to help ground yourself back in your body and ground yourself in a more energetic way, we have to come back to the body in some sort of physical way. And then link that with the breath, because the breath will help start to, regulate again your vagus nerve, and that also has a cascading effect on the rest of your nervous system. So for me, that's like one of the core practices that I go to. And I think the other one, honestly, is really just continuing to cultivate a gratitude practice. So finding things throughout the day to be grateful for, even if they're just like really little things. And so when you're starting to feel anxious or angry or overwhelmed, right, just taking that break, just stopping and saying to yourself, okay, what can I focus on right now that can help me feel a little bit more gratitude in this moment? What good things are happening in my life? What good things happened to me today? Those things to me seem to be the most helpful in getting myself grounded. And of course, too about some of those other practices of stopping and noticing three things, or focusing on what is it that I smell right now? What is it that I'm seeing right now? What is it that I'm hearing right now? What is it that I'm touching right now? All of those things are really helpful in terms of just more somatic regulation.
And I like those because those are quick. Those
Right.
are things that you can do that people don't even notice. They're not even paying attention, but you could do that really quickly in the car or at your office, in your cubicle, whatever. You're just sitting there and it takes like less than a minute. I like to give clients things like that, things that take you under a minute, because the idea with like meditation and stuff, people are like, oh, I can't meditate for 10 minutes. Well, why would you start with 10 minutes? 10 minutes is a long
That's an
time.
eternity if you're not used to meditating.
That's a long time, and you need to build up to that. So what can you do under a minute? Because it doesn't take a whole lot to just kind of say, oh, let me pull my energy back to myself.
Right.
Let me realize that I'm feeling kind of scattered. Let me pull it back to myself. So no, those are really good, just to help us to just recenter. Because I mean, if you're going to get out there with the Christmas shoppers and stuff like that, you're going to need to recenter while everybody's fighting over the toys and everything else. And with the mad dash, you're going to need to do that.
That's why I don't
So
do that.
give us your Instagram and like your websites and stuff. I'm going to have them posted on the front page of the show notes, but I want you to give it to everybody that's following now.
Okay. So the website's dragonflyreiki.net. So Dragonfly Reiki is one word. And then for both Facebook and Instagram, the handle is Dragonfly Reiki Atlanta, which is all one word as well.
Okay.
But thank you.
Yes, that's going to be in there. And I'm just putting the name of the business in the chat for everybody that is watching live. Right. So thank you so much for coming.
Oh, I'm
and
so glad to be here with you today.
With me.
We always have the best conversations anyway.
I know. And we could like go on forever too. And I'm so surprised that Shelly didn't make an appearance today.
Oh, well, Fred is here. If you've seen Fred in the back. Fred, Zen Master Fred, yes, my turtle. Shelly's not here because she'd probably be too disruptive.
Okay. Because I was waiting for her to come by. And...
Oh, well, if I'd known, then I would have called her in so that you could say hi to her, but it's all right.
So you guys make sure you check out Dragonfly Reiki. A lot of you have asked me about like Reiki and how to get into Reiki. I am not yet attuned to teach in that way, but if you're in Atlanta or even the South, because I mean, when I've gone to classes, there have been people in class from like Florida, Puerto Rico, before people
Alabama, South Carolina,
Alabama,
North Carolina. Yeah,
so
I teach people from all over the Southeast.
Yeah, she teaches people from all over the Southeast. If learning Reiki and becoming attuned is something that you even want to do just for yourself, for self-practice, she also has videos and things like that online that are helpful as well. Just, if maybe you don't want to delve that deep into the practice, but you just kind of need something that brings you back to center. She has the videos and things like that on there as well.
Yes.
So thank you guys for tuning in. We're going to have more discussion coming up this month, but I hope y'all gain some valuable information and just maybe a little bit of a additional perspective on how to navigate through the holidays.
Yes. Well, thank you. Appreciate being here with you
Thank
today.
you so much. Thank you so much. And you guys watch for the replay.
All right.